So welcome to this Prayer Spaces session around prayer spaces and chaplaincy. And I'm going to just do a very short prayer just to get us started, which is to say, God, thank you so much for the opportunities that we have in schools to be a presence and a blessing. Help us now as we hear from others to learn to hear from you, to hear your voice in the voices of others and in the voice of your Holy Spirit. Thank you. Amen. Right, so without too much further ado, I'm going to introduce Mike Haslam. So hi Mike, just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're up to, and a bit about the Centre for Chaplaincy and Education.
Hi Tim, it's really great to be here with you, and thank you to everyone who is also here with us. It seems like an awesome crowd. Okay, I'm going to give you just a non-work introduction to me. A few things that kind of drive and shape my life: faith in Jesus Christ, in God, Father, Son, and Spirit; family, amazing family beginning to disperse; friends, including furry ones. I've got 2 amazing spaniels. And then it's a slight stretch, but fell running. Any mountains. I love mountains. I love going up them, running down them, swimming around them, and everything else. Mountains are amazing. But for my ministry, if that's sort of me, for my ministry, it's been a huge privilege for many years to be involved in chaplaincy. I'm both in the northeast, in the southwest of England, and now in the northeast corner of Wales, where I'm doing chaplaincy and ministry and mission in the Diocese of St Asaph in a whole load of different ways, which God is continually revealing to me, and surprisingly, as happened today. And I also lead a national charity called Centre for Chaplaincy and Education. We're passionate about chaplaincy in schools, and we long with others to see a chaplaincy in every school and college in the UK, offering distinctive and inclusive spiritual, pastoral care to people, meeting them where they are. And it's been really, Tim's just put our website in the chat, and please do have a look at that. We've got a whole load there. We offer training courses and webinars in partnership like this one. We offer resources, whole load of resources there, and advocacy and pastoral support and more, and prayer. And I mean, of course, you don't have to be a chaplain to pray for your schools, or to lead prayer spaces in schools. But chaplains are really, really well placed, among others, and alongside the local church to do that. And it's really exciting to see that growing, as it's really exciting to see chaplaincy growing in schools and colleges with no specific faith foundation, no significant, often, history of partnership with our local church. But we have schools and colleges coming to us and saying, sometimes they're not quite sure what chaplaincy is, but they want chaplaincy, and they will say yes to prayer spaces, and they'll say yes to a level of spiritual engagement that we might never have thought was possible. So yeah, creating those opportunities to grow in depth and breadth as we pray for schools, pray with schools, and create chaplaincy within schools is right at the forefront of what we do.
Amazing. For people who are with us who aren't yet chaplains or are wanting to find out a bit more about chaplaincy, how would you, in broad terms, how would you define chaplaincy in education? What does it look like?
Well, I'm going to use the words of a lad in year 7, an 11-year-old. And interestingly, he said this on the first occasion he'd ever met a chaplain, first week in secondary school, and he'd, to the best of our knowledge, never been part of a local church and hadn't been to a church primary school. And he was asked what chaplaincy was, and he said that the chaplain was there to listen, to care, to pray for, and to bless the school.
Wow.
Which remains the most concise and kind of all-encompassing definition of chaplaincy I've ever encountered.
That's brilliant. I mean, it's almost a prophetic description of what this is from this boy. And I think you mentioned primary, but what's your sense of how chaplaincy is distributed across primary and secondary sectors?
There's a higher percentage of chaplaincy in secondary schools, specifically named chaplaincy. There's more chaplaincy-like ministry in primary schools, but we are seeing chaplaincy growing in primary schools. It often takes a different form. It's more often led by a volunteer member of a local church, but that's great. And chaplaincy, the smallest primary school that I ever helped set up a chaplaincy in had 26 children on roll.
Wow.
In a village with about 100 residents. And if you can do it there, we had some fantastic members of the local church, all in their 70s, who volunteered to become a sort of small team of chaplains to the school. And if you can do it there, then you can do it anywhere.
Wow. And my perception, chaplaincy is growing and still growing fast. Is that what you're seeing?
It is what we're seeing. Chaplaincy is also vulnerable. And there are places where it comes to an end, where a new head teacher doesn't get it, or sometimes actually a new church leader doesn't quite get it. So there's a vulnerability about it. But yes, it's growing, and that's really exciting. And thanks be to God for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mike. Please stay with us.
We will do.
And if you've got questions for Mike, you can drop them straight into the chat, and we can pick those up a little bit later on. But Mike will be with us for the Q&A towards the end as well. But for now, I'd like to hand over to Naomi and Catherine, who are going to give us a little bit of an intro to primary chaplaincy. Over to you, folks.
Yes, welcome to Catherine, who is one of our wonderful networkers across the country. How are you doing, Catherine? Have you had a good day?
I'm good, apart from not being able to get on the Zoom, and that was fine. I wasn't panicking at all. So it's all good, all good.
You're here. You are.
I'm here.
So, Catherine, I would love it if you could just explain to people how have you run prayer spaces at school where you are a chaplain?
So I've been a primary school chaplain. I was working it out. I was quite shocked for about 12 years now, which is just amazing, and it's my absolute joy and privilege. Though we are few and far between, but I keep banging the drum. I'm aiming to change that. So I've been a chaplain in primary schools for the last 12 years, and I've also worked for the Diocese of Durham as a chaplaincy enabler for the last sort of 3 or 4 years. I think what Mike was saying there, that chaplaincy does seem to be growing, and there seems to be a lot of interest in it. And we've been blessed to get some funding in Durham to put 5 chaplains in our secondary schools. So we're kind of in the process of doing that, and part of my role will be to support that. But my heart is definitely primary school. I never thought it would be. I worked for a long time in secondary school and loved it. And then found myself kind of through family circumstances moving to primary school, and kind of fell into chaplaincy by accident, and have never kind of looked back. It's like all the pieces fell into place. So I've done loads of stuff with prayer. I love prayer spaces. It's just amazing. I guess most people on the call know about it and have done it, but if you haven't, please look on the website. It's amazing. The resources are fantastic. It's kind of all there for you. And it's just a really, really creative way to engage children and young people in prayer in totally different ways. So yeah, I've done kind of all sorts. I've done sort of full days in school, which are absolutely exhausting. Reception all the way through to year 6, kind of coming through one big space. We've taken our prayer spaces from school into churches. We do a big cathedral prayer space in Durham for our year 6s, so that's about 2,500 children over 3 days, which is as chaotic as you can imagine. So all kinds of things. We've used prayer spaces to kind of kickstart courageous advocacy projects in school, and yeah, just making the links. We did virtual prayer spaces in COVID, made little films. Like, it's just so versatile. Yeah, it's a brilliant resource, and I love using it.
Amazing. There we go, everyone. You don't need to know anything else. Catherine. No.
Checks in the post. Is there checks in the post? Good.
So Catherine, you're a chaplain in a school. So how do you find that prayer spaces in schools connect with the work of chaplaincy? And maybe is there a difference between running them as a school chaplain as to maybe not, or a visitor?
Yeah. I think, I mean, as standalone things, I think they're a great way for churches to connect with their schools. But as a chaplain, it's just an amazing privilege that I'm kind of part of the furniture and part of the staff there. So the prayer spaces that I've run as I've been a chaplain haven't been kind of just standalone, really nice, good events, but they've been an integral part of everything else that I've been doing. Um, it's easier to get the kids involved. It's easy to get the kids running them if you kind of in the school, if you kind of know the school really well, and obviously you've got the trust of the staff and things. Um, and I think for me, one of my kind of biggest goals as a chaplain is to just normalize prayer. And I think kids get it. I think unfortunately they sometimes grow out of it, but they're really good at it. And I think if we can just nurture that kind of that creativity and that hunger that's already there, and I have that privilege of being, you know, with them week in, week out, 2 days a week in my current post. So it's just very much an intake, and they'll come with ideas. Oh, can we do this prayer space? Can we do that? Oh, that's a bit rubbish, Catherine. So you come up with that. Let's do this. This is better. So it's just a very integral part of sort of the whole role, really, which is great.
So good, Catherine. What would you say, or if and is there a unique opportunity that prayer spaces offer to your work with pupils and the wider school community? Or what does a prayer space do that's other things don't in chaplaincy?
I think surprisingly, in my school, I've been there for 2 years in my current school, and they've done bits and pieces of prayer space stuff, but they've never actually done a prayer space day. And to actually set aside that time and to invite all the children through, but the staff as well. And we got some of the older children to help lead the sessions, and we invited the parents to come in after, which didn't happen, but I did come up with a solution, which I'll talk about in a second. Um, it was yeah, it was just a very much a whole school community kind of event. And what I love about prayer spaces is that, you know, and again, it's so important when we're in school, we're not there to proselytize, we're not there to kind of, you know, evangelize. And I see that hand, but that's not appropriate in a school. But prayer spaces allow people of wherever they are on that journey of faith, whether they, you know, whether they enthusiastically believe in God and Jesus, which a lot of our primary school children do in our Church of England schools, but also for staff who maybe aren't quite sure, they can still come along and get involved. And for parents who you know it might be completely alien to, there's kind of ways for them to get involved in a way that feels safe and non-threatening and kind of normal as well, without it being kind of too sort of holier than thou and kind of weird. And yeah.
Yeah, it's really important, isn't it? I think it's accessible for all without any barriers. It's just come as you are, which is something
Yeah,
unique.
I didn't have much success in inviting the parents in. The kids were like desperate for the parents to come in after school, but yeah, the weather was nice. They weren't going to come. They weren't going to come in. Let's be honest. I can't compete with that. So I had this brainwave that I would set up a big tent outside, like a prayer tent, um, so that they didn't have to come into the school. It was actually in the grounds. And parents were obviously, this tent went up, and it was a massive bell tent, and the kids were really excited and curious, and then the parents were kind of, oh, what's that and what's that about? And I do have to confess that in conversations I did pretend it was a beer tent on a number of occasions, just to get the parents sort of interested, and then said, actually, it isn't a beer tent, it's just a tent. But then that kind of broke the ice, and we got conversations going. And again, it was very much the children bringing their parents in, but we got rid of that barrier. And, you know, hopefully next time we do something, they might be more willing to come in, or it has been suggested they actually do a beer tent as well. It would go down very well in my school, trust me.
Brilliant. But that is a brilliant way of helping people cross the boundary. And I think as a parent myself, turning up to school and you're collecting the kids, you've got things planned afterwards, and then going into the school, often the children are coming out, they don't want to go back in. So having something else in a neutral area is a really great idea. what would you say is the best thing about being a chaplain? And have you got any advice for somebody that's maybe thinking about becoming a chaplain?
I could go on for hours. I just, when you feel like you've just found your niche after so long, and it was like all the bits of my life and all the kind of experience, work experience and life experience, all of a sudden it all just kind of fell into place in chaplaincy, and it kind of made sense. And I just absolutely love being a chaplain. It's not always easy. It's sometimes frustrating. But it's always such a privilege to walk alongside people. And I think for me, it's the difference of visiting a school and belonging to a school. And I love belonging to a community. And I think that's what being a chaplain is. It's actually belonging to a place. And I just love everything about it. I really do. It's definitely my happy place. I mean, the stuff for the diocese is all right, but I love being with the kids in school. That's the bit that keeps me like alive and grounded. So if you're thinking about it, just do it. Don't hesitate. It is just the best job in the world. Talk to Mike, find some training. Talk to me. I'm happy to like chat with anyone and reel you in. But yeah, just if you really feel God's kind of speaking to you about chaplaincy, just listen up and go for it. You will not regret it.
Amazing. Amazing. So before we finish, have you got a favourite story of a prayer space or chaplaincy work or both?
This is really hard because there's so many, but I kind of came up with a general one. I think, and maybe it's to do with my own school career, but I'm strangely drawn to the misfits, the ones on the edges, the ones who kind of struggle with the behaviour in the classroom and academic, and to see kids like that come into a prayer space and excel and be able to help lead and run the stations. It never ceases to just kind of give me tingles, because those are the kids that maybe don't have the success in the classroom, but God's got a plan for them and God can use them, and He does. And yeah, I love that. I love seeing that. It's like you've picked who to run the prayer stations, it'll be fine, trust me. And sometimes it is, and yeah, but that's one of my favourite things, definitely.
That's so cool. I would totally agree with that as well. So many times when the teachers come in and say, "Oh, I'm not sure about this child. He doesn't cope very well with X, Y, Z," and we're always like, "No problem. Take it as you find it." And we all know they're normally the ones that love it the most, engage
Yeah.
the most, spend the most time. It does something. I had one in a prayer space before Christmas where he'd come in with a one-to-one, and she was so amazed by the transformation in this child. She actually was able to pray for her own dad herself and do a prayer activity whilst the child was so engaged, because he didn't need any help. And she said, "I cannot believe this has never happened." So I agree with you.
Yeah.
Totally.
Brilliant. And then, to be honest, I mean, they're mostly better behaved than I am, so that kind of helps as well.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for sharing all your wisdom. These nights are conversations, so if you have any questions further for Catherine, please do use the chat. We will come back to them at the end. But I'm going to pass back over now to Tim, and he is going to interview our next person.
So, welcoming Paul Sanderson. I just, in the crossover, just want to agree so much with Catherine on the thing about chaplaincy changes your relationship with the school from being a visitor to belonging. And we found that in Colchester, where I worked for many years doing chaplaincy, running a ministry of chaplaincy and prayer spaces. And it just that change, that transformation in the way the school perceives you and receives you into their midst, into the community, is just amazing. So yeah, it's quite transformational. Meanwhile, Paul Sanderson, hello.
Good evening, everyone.
Just tell us a little bit about where you are and your work as a chaplain. Just kind of introduce what you do. Yeah.
So I'm in West Sussex, the sunny seaside town of Littlehampton. I've been chaplain at the Littlehampton Academy, which is a Woodards school, for 16 years. And for the last 6 years, I've been spreading myself a bit thinner, 2 days a week, over in a place called Lancing and Sompting at the Sir Robert Woodard Academy, developing chaplaincy there after about a 5-year gap. So spread across 2 schools with about 1,300 in each, Woodard state schools, that are academies.
Right. And is the work similar in both of those?
No, actually, it's proved very different. If you
Mhm.
take a whole week of a chaplaincy, then I would say yes, I'm doing the job, but it's a lot more pastoral. It's Robert Woodard, a lot of one-to-one work, referrals from self-harm to bereavement work, both with staff as well as students, and presentation on a lower level. To whereas at my other school where I've been longer, there's a lot more structured events overseeing the student leadership, overseeing all the assembly program and the summer programs, the charitable work, the voluntary work, because I've been there longer and it's the community I live in. And so I couldn't do both of those roles the same at both schools. But it is interesting. At the end of a week, you look back and say, well, I did a lot of pastoral on a Thursday and Friday. I did a lot of practical, hands-on, preparing, training stuff on a Monday to Wednesday.
Yeah, and no, I can't remember. You said both of these are secondary schools, so 11 to 16, 11 to 18.
11 to 18, yeah, both with sixth form colleges.
And it sounds like at TLA you're very integrated into the school structures and processes and all of
Yeah,
that.
I've been doing community development work here for 30 years, and about 25 years ago, I was asked to be a governor of this school called Littlehampton Community School. And then before it became an academy, I was asked as the Christian governor to help assist them in writing a way of Woodards Schools have a chaplain. We want the right person. Could you help us get some other Christians together and write the right job description? I did not know genuinely that I was writing my own job description. But when you look back, it's like, did my mum write this for me? Because even though I wasn't ordained and didn't have a degree, which were the essentials, they trusted me. And here I am 16 years later.
Wow, that's remarkable. And they obviously still love you and make full use of you and have given you away for 2 days a week to Lancing as well. So, Paul, I know you run press bases on a regular basis at certainly at TLA. Do you run them at Lancing as well? Or is that
No, not on the scale that we do at TLA. I'll explain why later, but we do
yeah.
elements of it throughout the year.
So tell us a bit about TLA then, which is where some of your main
Yeah,
press.
so I've got a little share thing going on here for everybody to be able to see. So bear with me a second. So for 16 years, we've been running these prayer spaces once a week. I have the privilege to have a chapel space. In both schools, I have a chapel, and this is the chapel space that you're seeing now. And this is the layout for prayer week. A lot of it gets left up post prayer week to stick around annually, but obviously a lot of the other things are a bit too impractical to leave lying around and would lose some of their pizzazz and creativity and if they were left up all week. So you're looking at different venues, the obviously classic bubble tune. Oh, sorry, that's the radio that was on there as well. And yeah, so this is our chapel space. This is where forgiveness is. This is where bereavement is, the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus asked for help. You've got our grief wall there that's up all there. This is forgiveness and letting go of things. Forgiveness proved to be our biggest hit this year with a lot of students wanting to let go of stuff. The bubble zone is what's bubbling up in you. What are you feeling? What you're thinking? What's bubbling up in you? Stick it on there. It's all anonymous. Fortunately, for those of us involved in child protection, it's anonymous because a lot of stuff does come out on through those post-it notes. Then we go backstage to what we call backstage to another part. And so we break the class in half where we look at self-esteem. We're asking if you could ask God one question, what would it be? And then we have a world zone, which always is focused on peace and sometimes environment or both together, but looking at peace in our world or peace in our mind and peace in our hearts. And then the self-esteem space is where the mirrors are out, leading you down a pathway of positive words and encouraging words, taking you to a mirror that tells you you're made in the image of God. How does that feel? How does that feel to know that? What does that mean to you? And this is the one where the tears often flow because often we're not coping with positive words that are said over us. And each of the students then writes something positive about one of their friends there. And on the floor, when you see that, what questions could you ask of God? I've got a few that I'll focus in on a minute, but that really gives us the assembly theme for the whole year to work through. This is one of our starting slides that we recognize that a lot of people come from lots of different faiths and none. And we say we respect that totally. But as a Christian chapel, you might discover as you're looking something that goes on within your heart and with your mind that you can't quite nail it. And so I do, off the back of Easter, obviously is very close, say we believe in a Jesus who is God incarnate and loves you and showed us how to love and to care for the poor and to speak up on behalf of the marginalised and felt us included. So if you find this Jesus while you're walking around, it'd be interesting to know. And of course, eventually, some of the kids who are standing there when you say, "Have you found Jesus?" you might get the one Christian who have the courage to put their hand up before realising what the slide is. But then there's a wave of revival when the kids see, "Oh yeah, he's hiding behind the curtain." So there he is, in case you haven't spotted, there's Jesus hiding behind the curtain. So the process of prayer space is to help people discover who they are, that they're loved, and that they can love themselves. The greatest commandment is love your neighbor as you love yourself. So we want young people to love themselves and then to look out for their world and for their neighbor. So a lot of work on doing the self-esteem thing. Recognizing that so many of them are grieving and going through so much pain. These are the questions that they want to ask of God. Why did he, she leave me? Why? I loved them so much. You've got a whole bunch of things written there from different. Will I become a pro boxer? So we do a hopes and dreams tree that's there all year round that people add to with their labels. What does happen when we die? And how did you help your people? And why don't I understand everything? But of course, the challenges we face working in schools, the LGBT question comes up. Would my family still love me if I turn out that I like boys and girls? And that's my role as a chaplain is such a privilege when a student comes and says that they want to come out to their parents. Can they kind of practice on me because they trust me and they know that I'll give them good advice? So you've got lots of those. And I did mention the empty chair, our grief wall that staff and students alike add to throughout the year. And our jar of tears, encouraging students that tears are good and they're healthy, and chapel is a place where many tears flow. So yeah, that's our prayer space. That's how we roll with it every year. We are privileged to have accumulated a lot of stuff. It is available to borrow because we only use it kind of roughly once a year. I take some of it over to our open evening at the other school, and that's where I set up a mini prayer space so that all the parents get to have a go at forgiveness and bubble tube and a few other different things. But yeah, we've privileged to have a lot of equipment.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And so over at Lancing, are they interested in having a prayer space at some point?
After living in this community for so long, I've got contact with loads of churches. So we had over 15 volunteers from different churches come to help volunteer the spaces. I like what I was hearing from Catherine a minute ago concerning getting young people to run that space. And I've almost just before COVID, I was ready to do 1 week for just for the kids at my school, and then use some of the year 9s and 10s to help run it for the primary school. And then COVID came, and I haven't. And then I went part time there. So it's like the dream would be to have maybe some of the young people running it, but my principal is very keen for all year 7s to experience the prayer space, then some year 8s, and then a couple of year 9s, and that's the kind of cycle we go through. So in a 5-year cycle, every student has been to a prayer space for an hour, and we fill the lessons for a whole week. It's 5 lessons a day, full on. But the other school, I don't have the connections as well with the church, and the chapel building is not as good or as usable for prayer space as the TLA one is.
Right. So have you been able to adapt the fullness of what you're able to do at TLA? Are you able to adapt bits and pieces of that over at Lancing?
Yeah, absolutely.
How's that work? Yeah.
So these little tea lights you get with a little switch on the bottom that are candles, and so light plays an important part, and Jesus is the light of the world. So this year at Prayer Space, I gave people an opportunity to come to me after and say, if you want a prayer space at home, would you like a candle? Come and tell me why. So it wasn't a massive long queue, but after every session, 4 or 5 will come to me. They tell me why. Oh, my granddad's ill, or I'm praying for my parents, don't want to get them to divorce, or my mate is struggling. And so I'd give them a candle and they would take that away. And for me, they're setting up their own prayer space in their own bedroom. They'll stick on the positive words on their mirror in their bedroom. So I've been taking these tea lights to SRWA, my other school, and only last week with the year 11s who are doing their GCSEs, as we all know if we work in secondary school, and the stress that's come. And this one girl was saying, "Sir, I'm going into my GCE, and I'm really struggling. What do I do if I can't remember?" I said, "Okay, just think of that candle. Remember that candle again? Oh, yeah. Close your eyes, breathe, think of that candle, and then open your eyes and see what happens." And afterwards, she came up to me and said, "Oh, so it worked. It's magic. It works. I didn't know the answer. Closed my eyes, saw the candle, and the answer came to me. This stuff is magic." I said, "Okay, I'll accept that." So we take little bits, little elements of the bigger picture that you see there, and we hand them out. We give them away, the post-it notes, the pausing, the chapel space that we've got over there, just not on the scale I've just shown you.
That's brilliant because for us, that's a perfect example of making space for prayer across the school, which is, it's the whole idea is bigger than just the prayer space as it looks at TLA. That's part of it, but being able to make space for prayer around the school and in the students' lives is amazing. And also, one of the other things that we do go on about a little bit sometimes is this way of how do we help children to take prayer home with them? And I think I love that example, particularly the way that you couched it in a conversation and some understanding about what that was about before they then take it away. So they're taken away. So clearly, I mean, we can see the connection between chaplaincy and prayer space, but and you started as chaplain before you were doing prayer space, is that right?
No, I 1 year. So when I started 2009, one of the first things I did was a prayer space. I'd heard about it, I'd read about it. I came across an organisation that had some gear that I could hire, the bubble tube, and so it was one of the first things we did, and we set the scene, set our stall out, and saying, we believe prayer, contemplation, meditation, pausing, reflection has a big part to play in our mind and in our hearts, in our own mental health and well-being, as well as seeing change externally and internally. So, yeah, the chapel is now known as a place of prayer. It's just we crank it right up once a year.
Yeah. I think you probably almost answered this question, but just to summarise, like, what's the unique opportunity that prayer space brings that prayer in a chaplaincy setting? What does it do that really helps chaplaincy? And you could probably flip it the other way around as well.
Yeah.
What is it about chaplaincy that makes a prayer space work even better?
So every Tuesday we gather as a whole school. That building's designed so that all students, all staff can gather, all 1,300 of us. And so during prayer week, we have an assembly on prayer, and we pause and we reflect and we have silence and we tell stories and we have a bit of fun in it. And Coldplay's song "Pray" played a big part of that, because if you read the words to Coldplay song "Pray" as a prayer, you just read out the lyrics, and like the whole atmosphere shifted and changed because they're incredible lyrics of a band. So we can tell the whole school, and therefore the whole parents, because the kids go back, about this important part of people with faith's life, or often people who don't have faith but are in desperate situations and are wanting to cry out to something or somebody for support, help. And prayer is something that more and more people are saying, yeah, I want to turn to this. I want to engage in this. So the two just merge together so beautifully.
Brilliant. And you say you've been a chaplain there for, was it 16 years?
Yeah.
Like, what's the best thing about being a chaplain?
Best thing.
Yeah.
It's every day is so different. Every day you cannot you think, if you're a planner and you think, right, I want to know what my day is going to be like, don't become a chaplain, because it gets railroaded pretty much within the first 10 minutes of a staff member coming to chapel while you're trying to plan something, or a student says, "Sir, have you got a minute?" And then off that goes down a pathway that you drop your laptop, don't drop it, it's expensive. You drop your email doing, and you just respond to the ever-present need of a staff member, of a student, or a parent that's ringing in. We're just arranging for a single bed for a kid who's sleeping on a sofa bed. That came out of the blue. The local church is funding it. We'll go buy it together. We'll celebrate that. So, today a staff member wanted to just pour their heart out about something that's happened within work that's just tragic. And if you've got a minute, I was sitting as a reader for a student today who can't read, doing their GCSE English, and I'm reading Shakespeare to them, trying not to put any intonation in that as well, but desperately trying to help this kid who can't read or write very properly, using a keyboard. And then I have to read his answers out to him a little bit too loudly to start with, and I realized everybody else was listening, so I whispered his answers, because you're allowed to do that, but got to whisper. You just do not know what the day's going to bring.
Yeah. Obviously, your chaplaincy at TLA is so well developed and integrated into the life of the school. What advice would you give to somebody who's just maybe stepping over the threshold into chaplaincy in a school, maybe a secondary school, maybe even a primary school? What would be a good way to start?
Yeah, it's the blessing of the big ears. I have been blessed with them as a continual reminder. As an extrovert and someone with a big mouth, I've got to listen. We should be doing twice the amount of listening as we do talking. We're going in to listen to the staff, to the students, to the parents. What are their needs? What are they wanting to respond to? And it can be a long time of listening. and not, bulldozing in there with ideas that you've got. It's listening and responding to what's coming out of the need, because each school has its own culture, its own pain, its own tears and trauma that it's trying to work through. You need to find that out, and you do that best by listening. And then you build on that by responding to what you hear through different events, activities, provisions, whatever there might be. But listening is the key.
Brilliant. And finally, is there a favourite story? You must have so many, but is there a favourite story of either prayer space or chaplaincy from the recent past?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of gave my spare story from the cat. I think there was a special moment in last year's Year 11. We're in the hall and they'd asked me to do a moment to help them when it comes to a stressful moment, what to do. And so the teachers are giving it all the don't bring your mobile phones, etc. And I'd arranged with the site team to, when they hand it over to me, to kill the lights. So you've got 320 Year 11s, the staff, and I'd lit a candle and I put the candle on the exam desk and a proper candle on the exam desk, and kind of it was all bright in the hall and no one noticed it. And then when the mic was handed to me, all the lights went out and it was pitch black and you could hear a few screams and like that. And then I just waited for it, and then they focused on the candle, and then silence came. And I said, guys, you might have a moment either before or during the exam where it just feels so overwhelming. Remember this candle on the desk. Envisage that candle, see that candle, take the peace, the warmth, the comfort, the knowledge of this moment where in the chaos of it suddenly became silent. Hold on to that and then go back to your exam. And the feedback I got after the exams, oh, sir, I used that candle technique on my desk. Amazing. It was incredible. Thank you. It's like, I can't say, I didn't spend ages planning that. It was just something that came to me and said, let's bring a bit of light into what for many is a dark situation, just by using the situations we've got around me. Yeah, that was a special moment last year.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Paul. Brilliant. I hope you've been inspired, as I have, by all the stuff that Paul's able to get up to with doing his chaplaincy stuff. What we're going to do next is give you a chance to chat to one another in some small groups. So we'll have some breakout groups. If you prefer just to listen, that's fine. There's no expectation that people are going to chip in, but it's kind of good opportunity just to go around quickly, find out who you've got in the room, and learn from one another, really, and get to know some friends from other parts of the world or country. So we'll do that for about 10 minutes. This is a personal one to Catherine and Paul, but then we might bounce it to Mike. So Catherine and Paul, very briefly, how did you train as a chaplain? Paul started first.
Well, Mike does it a lot better now than when I was 16 years ago. It's very much life and life experiences and right place, right time, and I guess God. And then on top of that, adding layers of child protection stuff and all the other things you need to know. But I didn't officially train as a chaplain, although looking back, kind of my life has built up to this moment. So that's my story. Catherine?
Yeah, I kind of did things in the wrong order. So I kind of fell into chaplaincy by accident, did it for 8 years with kind of no training, and then did some short courses. And I've just actually completed my MA in chaplaincy, which has been amazing and rock hard. But it's been fantastic. So there's a whole range of courses out there now that like Paul says, a few years ago weren't there. So yeah, there's a whole sort of raft of stuff out there.
Amazing. Mike, what would you say are the essential starting point in terms of maybe character and skills that you'd expect someone to bring into chaplaincy even before they start training?
Well, you need, as Paul said, you need to be able to listen. You need to be able to listen to God as well as to the community. A really important thing for me is about being both distinctively Christian and utterly inclusive, and kind of holding that balance. But folk come into chaplaincy from being ordained ministers. I'm an ordained Anglican priest. Folk come in from being youth workers. Folk come in from being teachers. Folk come in from all kinds of different directions. And there are now a growing range of chaplaincy courses. CCE, Newman, Waverley, Growing Faith is about to launch one, and more. And that's great. And they can sometimes help you kind of connect the dots from, as Paul said, your different experiences and training in the past. But you also need to be at ease with living and sharing faith, I'm going to say, in the public square outside of Planet Church, which can be lonely sometimes, but is an immense privilege.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And as we said, there's a whole range of training available, from very basic start all the way through to master's courses. So if you do want to go down that road, there's lots of options there. Somebody in the breakout room mentioned that slots were available, offered to kids, so they were allowed to miss a lesson and go to a prayer space. How long was each slot and how many students? Was that who was? Oh, someone in the breakout room. Whoever that was.
Paul mentioned that they all came through in classes during his talk.
Yes, so the RS department allocate it as a lesson. So it's an RS lesson, but because we have a 2-week timetable, we had some geography students and some history students and some math students as well. And the teachers are very fine with that. Because we have a 2-week timetable, they can't all fit in their RS lesson. So it's part of their syllabus now. Learning to prayer is part of their RS syllabus at TLA.
Brilliant. Important question here from Lou. I'm a chaplain in a CV secondary school, girls' school, having some pushback from some Christian parents about our inclusive model and that we don't evangelise whilst keeping our distinctiveness. How do you manage a challenge like that? It's secondary, so I'm going to hand this over to Paul or Mike. Mike, I think, is waving it.
Can I? And then I'll hand over to Paul. I think I do say that we're not as chaplains there to make any assumptions or to impose faith. But it depends how you define evangelism. Because if evangelism is listening to people where they are and being willing to journey with them, and then when they ask, sort of in their time, on their turf, in their terms, being willing to journey in faith and discovering who Jesus is with them. And that happens in chaplaincy, and it's an immense privilege, but it's when the students or staff or parents are ready rather than it's us imposing. But I don't know what you think on that, Paul.
Well, I think Jesus was asked 160 questions and he answered about 6 of them, but he himself asked over 180 questions of those he came across. So that desire to know and to love and to understand and to listen to, rather than impose or preach even or convince through words, is not found much in the gospel. So that's what we've always sought to do. We are seeking to be Christ, and we are seeking to listen, and by asking questions of how are you, and mean it, and how is this working, and what's going on in your home, and that's our salvation conversation, because we are slowly drawing the trust, and people are sharing their pain, their journey, and our conversations are bringing healing. And so you will have CV schools that maybe want you to crank it up a bit more, and then you'll have others who are saying, we want you're just such a kind person. It's so clear we can see God in you, but you don't hardly ever talk about him. It's those kind of translations. I think, you'll always have those that want you to belt it out.
I think I'd want to say one possible question I'd like to put back to some of those parents is, would be, as a chaplain, how can I help your children to make their faith more clearly visible to their friends? One of the things that we're noticing is groups in secondary schools, groups of self-organising young people who are choosing to meet together to pray. And so it might be that it's only one suggestion, but it might be as a chaplain might say to those children, if they want to, because the pressure from the parents may not be representative of the actual views of their children, but if they wanted to, you say, well, let's arrange to pray once a week. We'll get together and we'll pray for the needs of you, of your friends, of the school, of the community, and where that's happening, in quite a few places, we're finding that other young people want to join who don't have a Christian faith, because they're intrigued by how prayer works and what it is and whether it's for them. And so I think, it's that drawing in thing that both Mike and Paul have expressed, that there's something about the intrigue and embracing a little bit of mystery and a little bit of opportunity and invitation, and then allowing young people the agency to make their own mind up rather than trying to force something onto them. But that might be one possible answer to that one. I suspect the parents might have a slightly stronger view than their children. Who knows? Carrying on with a few questions. My chapel area is like a goldfish bowl as a converted atrium. Any thoughts on how to develop prayer and reflective spaces where everything is bright? There's no opportunity to use the light and dark themes that Paul shared. Yeah. What if you're in a goldfish bowl that's light all the time?
I've seen trees outside used wonderfully as prayer spaces. I've seen plasma screens, not quite prayer spaces, but as reflective, prayerful. You put a slide up on a plasma screen. some of the other things, net curtains and prayer sheds. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen a primary school just got a shed that they bring out every year, and they just plonk it. They've got no space for it inside, so they put the shed in the front, and the kids just come through and walk through. It's quite a big shed, but in there are all the hangy and the post-it notey things.
Yeah. Yes, there's probably creative things you can do with drapes and curtains and materials and things like that. Catherine, I just let you voice you've put a comment in the chat about how we are in school and about the imbalance of power.
Yeah, I just think kind of parents kind of wanting you need to evangelize more. You need to, especially working in primary, I'm even more conscious of it. I could get the children to do anything. I could get them to put their hands up, and and that is not how it's done. That is not the right way to do it. I think, it's about being very ethical. It's about being very honest. It's about being very transparent, and being very clear that school is not church. And understanding the context, understanding the differences between working in a school and working in a church. And that's not to say that we don't want children and young people to come to know Jesus. We do, absolutely. But there are ways of doing it. And I think a lot of it is like, we don't have to squeeze Jesus in everywhere. Let's trust God to do his bit. If we do ours, and let God do his bit too.
Superb. Yeah, that imbalance of power thing is really important. We've got a few more questions, so we want to carry on for a minute or two longer, because this is really good. How do people engage and support other staff, particularly those with no faith, with engaging with and delivering worship opportunities? Are any of you involved in supporting collective worship, and how does that work when you're working alongside staff who maybe don't have a personal faith? Yeah, Catherine.
I would say it's meeting people where they are, not where you want them to be, not where you think they should be, but actually where they are and where their experience is, and helping them to be as authentic and genuine as they can. It can be a practical kind of help in terms of resources or a confidence thing. One resource that I've used recently for staff is called Soul Space, which is a Church of England resource. It's really worth a look at, because it's trying to kind of give confidence to people who don't have faith language or don't have any faith experience. It's very accessible. So I think it's about them being comfortable with where they are themselves in their own faith journey, and knowing that they don't have to have all the answers, and they don't have to have it all sewn up to actually be able to kind of stand there and for God to use them to lead others in worship. I certainly don't have all the answers, so.
Paul. Yeah,
we on a Tuesday we have staff prayer at 7:45 for 15 minutes. 4 or 5 staff come. And on a Wednesday we have staff breakfast. 1 week bacon sandwiches, the next week croissant. We have 30 to 40 staff come. And there's different types of feeding, and depending on your interpretation of prayer, there's different types of conversations going. But both make the chapel space an accessible, friendly, welcoming space, with all of what's up there, just a different smell in the air.
Some more comments. Susie's put on an earlier point, I set up a worship council in a primary school. All the kids tell me what they want, and then I send their list to the head teacher and then put into action what they want, for example, a church visit or something. So again, involving the children in the chaplaincy program, as it were, so their voice heard. Love the idea of enabling children to make their own prayer space at home, whether it's a bookmark, candle, picture bowl. We've got some resources on the website. If you go to Prayer Spaces in Schools website, and look for the resources, there's a home button which is green, and you can click on that. And there's lots of ideas for what you could do at home, how children could pray at home. Funding. Do some schools put money behind these prayer projects, or is it a case of getting money from local churches, or both? Catherine and Paul, how does funding work where you are?
I've got a chaplaincy budget at TLA, which is okay, and it's been in place for 16 years. So obviously I've accumulated, and then I top up. Most of it's spent on post-it notes.
There you go. This is what the budget pays for.
Yeah, I think beg, borrow, steal. Does that? Yeah, some support from church, some support from the diocese, I have to say. And I think the longer you're in school, and call me cynical, but especially if science is due, the suddenly budget will appear. So it's how you pitch things sometimes.
Borrowing.
And I found that local churches can be really generous, and they like the idea of funding something specific that you can see in quotation marks, the result of, although the result is much bigger than the actual press space because it's the spiritual impact. But it's a relatively easy ask from a local church to give you a few £100s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And stuff like gazebos and fairy lights, we often say they're probably lurking all the way around the parish somewhere. You just need to be able to borrow them. And Sally Martin has mentioned Bristol Schools Connection, who are friends in Bristol, Jane Gillis, and they've got Christmas in a box, Easter in a box. So if you're anywhere within a distance of Bristol, it'd be worth getting in touch with them. That, I think, concludes the questions, and we've gone 6 minutes over. Any final points from our three brilliant contributors? Thank you so much for anything else that's popped up in your head that you wanted to share with people.
Can we just say thank you to you, because it's been a great conversation.
We've really enjoyed it, and thank you to everybody that's chipped in with a question or a bit of feedback or comment. That's what makes this thing come alive. Presbyterian Schools, if it's anything, it's a community of practitioners. It's a movement across the nation of people like all of you on screen who are making these places happen and discovering things and sharing the wisdom and the resources with others. So thank you all for your part in that. We will send out an email afterwards with helpful links and some comments. And if you want to get back in touch with us to connect with people or to find resources, please do that. That's what we're here for. Naomi, I think we are pretty much there. I'm going to ask Mike if he would pray for us, for those of us that are chaplains, for those of us that run prayer spaces, for those of us that run both, and for the children and young people that we serve as we close.
Thanks, Tim. Let's pray. God of love, we pray for all of our schools and colleges, for the teachers, the parents and carers, and the amazing children and young people within them, especially those who are facing exams and coming towards the end of a season in their particular school or college. And we pray for all churches involved in schools, all who lead prayer spaces and prayer spaces in schools, and for all chaplains and for all who support chaplaincy. And we pray that as we seek to walk in the footsteps of Jesus, we will be able to live and share his love and know Jesus always walking alongside us and blessing us with his presence. Amen.
Amen.